Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas. Today, I'm sitting down with my guest, Spence Manthe, who is the Chief Sales Officer at Omnis Capital. Excited to be jumping in, talking about a number of different things from previous business ventures, exiting a business, kind of where we're at today, all sorts of stuff like that. Spence, your knowledge is going to be fantastic to dive into, so I'm excited to have you here today. Why don't we just start with a little bit of background? I always like to at least start with, what is the current business? So tell us very briefly,
Sure,
what is Omnis Capital, and then we can kind of go into kind of your background and what led you to being a part of this new venture.
absolutely. So Omnis Capital is primarily what you would consider a carrier payment platform, kind of formed out of what we recognize being in the freight brokerage space for years and the things that we struggled with, being able to find a product that benefited carriers and that benefited brokers, which ultimately in that ecosystem, cash flow, managing your cash flow and understanding how to manage your cash flow is king. And I think a lot of people that enter the brokerage space love brokerage, they love transportation, they love logistics. It's the managing of the cash flow aspect that they don't necessarily love. And so that's really the impetus of why we started Omnis Cap.
Very cool. So I know you and I've had a chance to kind of go into a little bit of history and things like that.
Sure.
But for the viewers, give us the context on kind of what's been your background. I alluded to it earlier. You kind of exited a business, got
Yep.
into starting this new venture. At least like the high level 10,000 foot view of kind of your background and history leading up to this.
Sure. I've spent the last 30 years. I'm going on year 31 in the logistics space. And I started out at the very bottom, started out working on the dock, driving a forklift, loading trucks, unloading trucks. Um, Eventually worked my way up through the LTL industry, was on the customer side where I managed a $50 million freight spend, went to the freight brokerage side, and have spent the last 20 plus years in freight brokerage. Um, Love it, love every aspect of it, right? You fall in love with the problem, you don't fall in love with the solution. And in freight, there's always problems. Uh, when COVID hit, I was working for a pretty large brokerage here in Texas, and when COVID hit, a few buddies and I decided to start our own brokerage. So we did. Well, why not? COVID lockdown, the world's coming to an end. No better time than to go out and create chaos, right? It's like buying a house when you're pregnant. Let's just keep adding all the stress you can. So, so that's what we did. We scaled fast. We were able to get to about $30 million in revenue our first year, and I had the opportunity to buy that brokerage. I find a funding partner to purchase the brokerage, and I was able to do that. And the company was Summit 11 that came in and bought it, and so I was the 50% owner and the CEO of Summit 11, and we were in that business for roughly 3 years. And then we were approached by a company out of Ohio that was looking to acquire another brokerage like ours in Texas. And so we decided to make the deal and we sold. And we finalized that sale on March 15th of this year of 2024.
Amazing. I'm excited to kind of dive into a little bit of the lessons learned from buying into exiting and kind of starting something
Sure.
new. But I always like to start with just a couple questions around your current role in the current business. So Chief Sales Officer. I think it's important to note that you had been CEO. Chose now Chief Sales Officer. There was a little bit of conversation we had in the past on reasons for that, not necessarily wanting the CEO role again. So maybe kind of talk through that a little bit on, what does it mean to be the Chief Sales Officer in the current business, and why that role as opposed to wanting to be a CEO once again.
Yeah. So I think you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses, right? I use the reference. You may think you're tough. You may be armory tough. You may be local county fair tough, but are you the arena tough? And I think in order to be a CEO at a full scale business, right, when you're talking $100 million business, there are a lot of things you need to know. There are a lot of things that are not glamorous, that are not fun, and it's not really about doing the things you thought you were going to do, right? Parenting is not all about coaching baseball and taking pictures and sending them to your family. It's a lot of dirty diapers and spilled cereal and those types of things. I love sales. That's in my DNA. It's what I've always loved. I love scaling sales organizations. And at 53 years old, I've done a lot of things and I've learned a lot of things. But most importantly is I have to understand what my strengths are to an organization, right? What do I bring the most value to, and what do I get the most enjoyment out of? And there's so many terms: chief revenue officer, chief commercial officer. There's all these things, these terms that at the end of the day, I just love sales. Chief sales officer was great for me. Really, I set the tone. I get up and I lead by example. And so that was a natural fit for me. My business partner, who was my partner at Summit 11, is the CEO. He's a lot smarter, not nearly as handsome as I am, but he's a lot smarter. So again, I think it's having the humility to know what you're good at and know, more importantly, what you are not good at, and accepting that. So
Mm.
that's why I chose that role.
I like that. I think that's such an important note for others out there that continue to grow through their their trajectory and things like that. But as chief sales officer, someone that just loves sales, what makes a good salesperson? What are kind of some of the key components to what would make a solid or a good salesperson today?
First and foremost, I think being hyper curious. Um, the idea of thinking you have the solution or you know the answer, right? Delivering whatever that is not how people buy product. And being curious, asking questions, wanting to learn about that process, wanting to learn about that person. I can't stress that enough to anybody who wants to join the sales world. If the idea is to make money, you're going to miss the mark, right? You may make money, but at the end of the day, you'll be longing for something, right? It'll be a grind. It'll be an uphill battle that I don't think you can sustain. Being curious, being able to learn, asking questions, and then listening, genuinely listening to the answer, right? We could talk ad nauseum of I've got my sales script and I ask this question and then I ask this question and I ask this. You ask the first question and then you listen. The second question comes from whatever the answer was, right? And really, that's called a conversation, and you engage and you build that rapport. It's not about getting to your end game. So I think that's super important. I think having thick skin, um, don't go into it thinking, oh, it's a numbers game. It's not a numbers game. If you do the wrong thing 1,000 times, you're going to have the same outcome 1,000 times. It's a learning experience. So I think those are there are a ton of things, right? You can see being competitive and all these types of things, but I literally think being curious and being a great listener, I think it's like core foundation.
Ooh, those are some really good pieces. I love that. So before we get kind of deeper into some of the history and maybe some lessons learned along the way, I always like to at least talk a little bit about what makes the current business so special, or kind of how can we frame it up for those in the audience to really kind of understand who's a good fit, things like that. So I like to ask the general question: who primarily does the business serve? So Omnis Capital, who's kind of the main the main customer that you serve? If I were in the audience and I'm listening to this later on, how would I know that I'm a good fit, or I might know somebody who's a good fit that I should be connecting with y'all?
If you're a broker, right? If you're a truckload broker, LTL broker, transportation broker, or if you are a shipper, if you ship product, those are the two core customers. Pretty simple. What I would never want to talk about what differentiates us. I think that's wrong. I think everybody has what differentiates them. I think at a core, having been in the space, right? It's one of those things where I don't want to talk to somebody about parenting who just graduated high school, who doesn't have any children, but is really excited about being a parent and read 3 parenting books. I want to talk to grandpa. I want to talk to grandpa who raised 5 kids, whose 5 kids raised 5 kids, and can tell me all the things and give you a bigger picture. I just came from that space. I just came from the brokerage space. I've been a shipper. I understand the cash flow. It isn't genuinely about satisfying my VC or my private equity partners. That's not what this is about. I think the difference from me personally is I'm not trying to impress. I'm trying to inspire. That sounds so cheesy, right? I didn't read it somewhere. I don't have a tattoo. I have a lot of tattoos, but I don't have that tattooed on my arm. I genuinely think that when you come in and you try to impress somebody, when you go on every website right now for the space that we're in, or for primarily any space, it's look how many logos we have. Look how long we've been in business. We are Crane's top 500. We're the best place in Austin to work, or whatever. Great. That's great for you. And that's super impressive, but that doesn't inspire me. How can you help inspire my business? And the Omnis Capital side, you want to grow your business. You want to hire people. You want to give your employees the greatest experience. You want to be able to have a marketing team managing that cash flow, understanding an extra 30 days of cash flow that I will take care of with your carrier, being able to use that 30 days of cash to hire more people, to build bigger teams, to have an offsite, to go to the 3 conferences this year that you want to go to. That inspires you to do in your business what you set out to do, as opposed to pulling your hair out every day trying to manage cash flow. So I think that's it. If you wake up every day with the intention of inspiring somebody and not trying to impress somebody, it's amazing the good things that will happen.
Mm. Which, that leads me to some questions around marketing. And
Sure,
I'd love kind of your perspective kind of from two ways. So one being
sure.
kind of what have you found to be effective in terms of marketing for the business and getting in front of that ideal customer. But also sitting in this, chief sales officer role, how important is it that marketing and sales are interconnected and have, conversations and are actually, talking to one another as opposed to being very separate, as they can be for some of the businesses out there?
I think marketing and sales. It's funny when I think of marketing and I think of freight brokerage. When I started, right, I'm old. I can comfortably admit that I'm young at heart. We didn't have marketing. Your sales was your marketing, right? And I know there's this dynamic between cold calling as a marketing role or cold calling as a sales role. And I think it's semantics. I think at the end of the day, who's reaching out to the customer, who's reaching out to the industry, the audience, what are they saying, and are they reputable? Do they know the process? Do they know the product? And the one issue that I have with a lot of marketing people is they can put words together and they can create beautiful content, but they don't have the end user experience in mind. And again, this is where I say you fall in love with the solution or you fall in love with the product. You don't fall in love with the problem. And so for me, marketing and sales, it's about having a conversation. It's about having a conversation and truly hearing what the problems are. What are the issues? So I'm a little more old school in that, where the market is going to tell me what my solution is going to be if I listen, as opposed to me trying to tell the market what the solution is. And in the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's been so much equity dumped into the brokerage space. Obviously, with COVID and everything hit, and the world went, everybody had to get toilet paper and everything that they needed to get. They saw it as a cash grab. They saw it as an opportunity to, I don't know, modernize an antiquated industry. And I think good old fashioned having conversations, talking to folks, looking them in the eye, explaining that you know what their problems are because they told you, not because you think you know what their problems are. So maybe not the exact answer you were looking for, but that's where I come from.
Oh man, it makes me so excited to hear it. I mean, the honest, piece here is I love the marketing side of things, but I love it because
Sure,
in reality it's conversations, it's relationship building. It's all the things
sure.
that really great salespeople know to do all the time anyway,
Yeah,
but pulling that into the marketing side and saying it's just the start of that part of the conversation. And how do we
yeah.
build that rapport and all that kind of stuff? It just might happen a little bit more online today than it used to. Um,
Agreed.
but I
And
totally love that.
and I think it's potentially different when you are marketing a product. If you're marketing this pen, you're creating buzz around this pen. In most of what we do, it is a service, so therefore it's an experience at the end of the day. And it's difficult to market an experience that doesn't include pictures of Hawaii and mai tais and margaritas and all of that stuff. It's really, people have to know who you are, right? But I'm not afraid of the phone. I'm comfortable picking up the phone and having conversations and doing those things. And so, I don't know. That's kind of the avenue.
That's fantastic. So let's take a moment and kind of step back. I'd
Sure,
love to kind of dive into some of the lessons you've learned along the way. But maybe let's start with very recently, exited another business. Um, Probably the thing that really isn't talked about a bunch that I'd love kind of your perspective on is how do you know when it's time? So there you had the opportunity, was able to exit that business. Uh, what was kind of some of the thought process or lead up to saying, yep, this is a good opportunity. It's a good time to exit this business and do something different, as opposed to saying, now we're going to continue to keep and grow and continue to move forward with the business rather than sell it.
yeah, that's a great question. And I think it probably varies for a lot of different people at a lot of different times. We were approached in March, about a year ago, prior, by a company, asked us if we were, and we talked about it internally, right? Thought, okay, maybe, but we probably thought we were 2 or 3 years away from wanting to exit the business. And a couple of economic factors came into play. The market's tough. the freight market, right? I mean, I think the majority of markets are tough right now. The cost of capital is outrageous. It's extremely expensive right now. It used to be free, right? I mean, literally, they used to give money away, and now it's very expensive. So that played into it. But I think primarily what happened is we were at a crossroads. I think we grew the business as fast as we could, as organically as we could, to where outside of a large technology purchase that would then give us the ability to efficiently scale further, but you're looking at maybe a 2-year return on that and not the best market to do that. So really looking at a partner that already had that capability, that needed the, I want to say, muscle. Our company really was a lot of muscle, right? And so being able to partner with somebody who had the finesse, it really made a lot more sense, as opposed to undertaking a technology project that I think would have probably not set us back. It just financially, it would have taken us a couple more years to be able to return it, to get a return on the investment. And I won't go in depth about what those technology capabilities were. It really came down to, and gosh, this will sound. I want this to sound as authentic as I possibly can make it sound. I had 60 employees, roughly 60 employees, and making sure that those 60 employees had jobs and had a place to go to work where it wasn't, holy crap, I hope if we muscle enough we can get through this. I wanted to put them in a situation because they busted their tails. They busted their tails to get our company to where our company was, and I wanted them, every one of them, to have the opportunity then to go to the next level. And I didn't want to be the one to hold them back because I was conservative with the cash, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good insight. Again, it's one of those things that I don't think is expressed or talked about enough. So I appreciate you kind of going through kind of some of the thought process there.
Sure.
Looking at it in hindsight, is there anything that you would either do differently or like a lesson that you learned along the way that was kind of unexpected in the process of exiting a business in general?
I'd never done it before. First off, I've been a part of companies, that were purchased by other companies. I'd never been across from private equity groups and all of that. So yeah, there was a definite, my Washington State University public 4-year degree was significantly underarmed, right? Against everybody that I was going to battle with. I think from a foundational aspect, I would have looked at raising capital earlier, or I would have looked at different lines of funding earlier. I'm not a financial analyst. I did not expect the interest rates to do what the interest rates were going to do. We knew that we were going to take a downturn in the market. I just had never seen anything like this. We went from one unprecedented event with COVID to another unprecedented event with the interest rates going out of control. And while we were trying to ride that high and get to that point, probably should have been looking at a different. So that's something I would have done differently. But honestly, that old saying, the rearview mirror is this big and the windshield is this big. Looking backwards, I'm just a knucklehead who had phenomenal employees, had great mentors over the last 30 years, learned really good lessons, and was able to exit a business for a large sum. And it was mutually beneficial to everybody. So there's really not anything I look back and it would change, as opposed to what I'm excited to do in the future. Right,
Mm.
taking that wisdom, taking those lumps, and moving forward in the future.
Mm. So when you look at growing the business from 2020 to start of 2024, 60
Mm-hmm.
employees, very large numbers in terms of kind of revenue size and all that kind of stuff. As you went through that journey, especially with the CEO role that you carried at the time, what are some of the lessons that stand out in your mind? You kind of had to learn and go through that allowed you to build a company that as successful as that.
Hmm. Well, for one, I would say nobody does it on their own, right? Uh, Find really good people and trust really good people. The art of delegation, that's the one thing that I learned very quickly, was the faster I could delegate and trust, the faster we could scale. Bottlenecks kill organizations. And so people trusted me along the way. When I was young and inexperienced, people trusted me. They gave me opportunities to fall flat on my face, and didn't crucify me when I did it, right? They picked me up and showed me the way, and that's how I learned. And so making sure I did that. I also think that everyone at some point suffers from imposter syndrome, right? No one wants to admit it, and you can read books where, oh, that's not it. Everybody suffers from imposter syndrome. You wake up in the morning, you put your clothes on, you drive to work, you walk into the office, and you have 50 people that see you as the CEO, that look at you as the person who has every answer. That whatever problem happens in this organization, you are the person that has the answer. And then you get in your car and you drive home to your wife and your 4 kids who look at you like, take the garbage out, go get the lawn mowed, walk the dog, and it keeps you very humble very quickly, right? And I think what I think is most important is not taking the CEO role home, but taking the parent, father, husband role to work, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And so many people that I knew growing up, their dads came home and carried the air of I'm important, view me as important, and then they went to work, and it's like, gosh, no, you're a servant. Everybody looks at you to have answers, right? Everybody looks at you for help, and that's how you have to teach and you have to grow and you have to mentor. And so I think that was probably the thing that I relied on the most, right? Was uh, just just keep going and don't suffer from imposter syndrome, but recognize the fact that if it can be done and you can't do it, find somebody who can. There's a solution out there. So yeah, I know that was a random long answer. Um,
It's a
hopefully there
phenomenal
was
answer.
hopefully there's something in there.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I absolutely love that, and some of the being able to separate from work and business and being able to not bring some of that stuff home and being able to take the humility into the workplace and things like that, I think is a massive key point within that. Um, any tips or thoughts for somebody that's kind of moving through that role and learning to kind of become the CEO of a large company and things like that? Any advice for them on how to like emotionally manage through running the company and still having that humility and being back at home and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know that I have an answer for that, right? And the reason that I say I don't know that I have an answer is I think there are two types of CEOs. Oh, I mean, there's multiple types of CEOs, but I think there are what you would call wartime CEOs and peacetime CEOs. And I think
Mm,
when you're in a startup, it's more of a wartime CEO. I have to be there. I probably am not the best at everything, but I probably know more than most. And then I think what happens is as your business starts to scale, you have to get out of the wartime CEO and into the peacetime CEO where it's a little more static. That's not necessarily my skill set, right? My skill
mm,
set is I'm not Harvard MBA. I didn't from that perspective. It's more education, trial by fire. I learn from the ground up. I would say depending on what organization you're looking to do, if you want to scale something yourself, and another thing is I would love to mention there's two different types of leaders in the same person while you're at work. When you are creating a brokerage or creating a sales organization, everybody sells. I don't care who you are, everybody is selling. You're selling to everybody that you talk to, right? You're selling your company, you're selling yourself, you're selling your ideas, you're always selling. But when you're talking to your employees, you're not selling. Don't try to sell if you have to try to sell your employees on the idea or sell your employees why this is a good place to work or sell your employees, then you're missing the mark. You lead your employees, right? And you lead them by doing the right thing, by showing them what is possible, not by telling them what is possible. Now when you go into a customer meeting and you're negotiating with private equity guys, it's a whole different deal, right? Now, maybe not as nice, maybe you are doing a little bit more selling, but I think some people don't, they can't differentiate between that. But none of your employees want to be sold to. None of your employees want to be told how great of a place this is to work. And if you all sign up on this and you do this survey, we're going to be voted the best place. And look how great that makes me feel. And you can say you're a part of it. And it's like, well, I don't want to say I'm a part of it. I actually want to be a part of it. Right. And, another, when you talk about growing up, to go be a CEO, um, you stand in front of the podium, win, lose, or draw. You don't stand in front of the podium. You don't stand in front of your company after a good month and cancel that meeting on a bad month. You stand in front of it, win, lose, or draw. If what you expected to happen and that gains trust, that shows them that you have the wisdom to, yeah, this is what we predicted was going to happen. This is what our budget was. And I think far too often people want to stand up when it's good and take the accolades, and they want to point the finger when it's bad. That's I don't care what level leadership you are, that doesn't fly. I think people can see through that.
Oh, now there's a wisdom nugget for this conversation. I absolutely love that. So let's future forecast for a moment. Looking
Sure.
for the next towards the next 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
Building a new venture, kind of running through this here. What are you most excited for? What's kind of if you cast the vision for the next 3 to 5 years for Omnis Capital for kind of your role within the company? What are you excited about? Like what's on the horizon for you?
What I'm most excited about is genuinely helping other people that were in the position that I was in. Right. Um, as I don't know, foolhardy as that sounds, I won't resonate with everyone, and I don't expect to resonate with everyone. But I think we're in a position with our company where we don't have to go out and close every deal. We want to find the right partnerships. We want to find those people that are, again, we've done this. We've been in this space, so there's a lot more mentorship than just the financial aspect, right? I can, just like with your children or just like with your father to you or whomever, I can tell you the things you're going to go through. I can tell the emotional highs and lows that you're going to have, and I can tell you the financial pitfalls. And the faster you break the hubris of "I got this," the better you're going to be. So I'm super excited about that. Where I feel like is maybe not much of a differentiated product because freight brokerage, everything becomes commoditized, right? Everything's commoditized. You have competitors, I have competitors, and at some point it just becomes a commodity. um, but not having to sell it like a commodity, not having to devalue it, but truly being able to focus on the positives of what we can bring to the market. That's what I think I'm most excited about. And I learned this even when we started our brokerage. If I focus on the money, it may or may not come. If I focus on the process and the problem and the people, the money and the success are going to come. It's just it's happened over and over and over and over again in my career, and so that's really where it comes from.
That is really cool. Well, Spence, I know we've covered a lot of ground so far today. I've got a few
Sure.
what I call rapid fire questions as we kind of
Oh
start
yeah.
to begin to wrap up.
Okay.
Really just, additional wisdom nuggets for the audience that have some key takeaways, that sort of thing. Uh, so when you look at kind of your journey overall, the 31 years in the industry versus, building the business, all of that kind of stuff, what would you say for you has been kind of your key to success?
Hard work, genuine hard work. That's what I would say.
I like that. How about advice? If you could give just one piece of advice for other business leaders or entrepreneurs out there, what would you want to leave them with today in terms of advice?
Trust yourself. Like go all in on yourself. If you got a pile of chips, put them on you, and have skin in the game.
I like that. That is a good piece of advice. Book recommendations. Any book recommendations that you would give to the audience could be something that you're reading currently, have read recently, audiobook, if you're not a big
Yeah.
reader, podcast, anything else like that. But any recommendations you'd give?
Yeah. I'd give the Grapes of Wrath. But
Ooh,
my wife just started that. I've read it probably 5 times. I think right now with where we are in our current state of chaos and scaredness and all of the things, if you read the Grapes of Wrath and realize what people went through, uh, it's amazing. It's in our DNA. It's in our DNA to survive tough times, and I
mm,
think that's a good one.
excellent. I like it. I don't think that one's hit our reading list yet, so I'm excited to add it on there.
Yeah,
Um, So before we get to the final question, I always like to end kind of the
sure.
conversations on for those that are in the audience that want to learn more, that maybe want to connect with you, kind of all that sort of thing. Where can we advise them to go for more information or to make some connections?
Easiest thing is to find me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me via email at spence.manthe at omnis-capital.com.
Beautiful. For those that are watching and listening right now, I'll make sure I put all of that in the video description and the podcast notes below. So once we wrap up here, make sure you take a moment, go click the links, send Spence a quick message at very minimum. Just say, hey, saw you on the Business Spotlight. Great conversation. Just always like to connect to that sort of thing. It's one of my favorite things when it comes to Business Spotlight. So um, as we wrap up, final question for today. But Spence, what is most inspiring to you today?
I think the spirit of entrepreneurship. I think right now, so many people. I've got children. I've got 4 kids, and I've got a 20-year-old who's a sophomore at Texas A&M. And his idea of wanting to go out and figure stuff out My generation didn't have that. My generation was you go and you get a job and you stay at an employer and you get your pension and you do your thing. Today, today kids want to create stuff. People want to create different experiences, the ideas that they bring to the table and what they're willing to do. They're changing the game. They're changing how the game is played. They're changing how it's watched, how it's enjoyed. And I think that's what's most inspiring is not all the crap that we're hearing about, not all the negativity, but just these kids that are coming through and saying, hey, this is my shot and you're going to participate. And I love it. I genuinely love it. And I'm so thankful that I have 4 kids that are gonna continue to grow up and do this.
Oh, that is powerful. I appreciate that. Spence, I want to say thank you again for taking the time.
Yeah.
I know I could probably sit here and talk your ear off for another hour, but I just want to appreciate the time that you've given here today, the wisdom that you've shared, and some of the experiences along the way. So thank you so much.
Tanner, I appreciate it. It's been a blast.